Hello, you're Rob.
I am indeed.
I'm Dave, and welcome to the List Makers, a spin-off podcast from the Doctor Who show. And tonight, Rob, top 5 classic series directors as submitted by listener Frankie Naughton.
Frankie gives us a lot of good stuff on Facebook, and this is a really good topic, so thank you, Frankie.
I said when this was pulled out of Turlo's Hat of Rassilon last month, I thought we were probably heading to an inevitable golden snap. Mm-hmm. You said there could be multiple. Look at my list.
I did indeed.
Oh, there could be a couple of snaps, but I don't know for sure.
Golden snaps
Let's
are tricky.
Find out.
Very tricky.
Golden snaps are tricky. Look, I've marked out what I think the golden snap was going to be, and I'm going to make a mark there. I think that will also be a golden snap. Sorry, not a golden snap, just a snap. But let's find out. Listeners, how many do you think we'll have? Let us know. My turn to go first and make my list. So, Rob, I'll do that.
Sounds good to me.
At number 5, I've gone for Timothy Coombe, who directed 2 Doctor Who stories, both in the Pertwee era, Silurians and Mind of Evil. This is a man who was so good at his job because he spent a lot of money doing it, and my God, you can see the money on screen.
Yeah.
Barry Letts could see the money in the red lines on his bills and his budgets and said, please never come back and do that again.
Yeah.
Which is a great shame because Timothy Coombe, I think, is a really strong director, and they are both very strong stories. They are high action, high intensity, very good effects, very good casting, really, really strong. I think it's a shame we don't get more of Timothy Coombe, but I do acknowledge, though, that being able to come in on budget is a important skill for a director, so he doesn't get any higher than 5.
Yep, pretty important.
Number 4, I am going with Paddy Russell. There are some really strong stories here from Paddy. Massacre, Invasion of the Dinosaurs, The Pyramids of Mars, and The Horror of Fang Rock.
Bangers.
This is a director who can turn just a bunch of people talking in rooms into a really high, intense piece of drama in The Massacre. She manages to get the human character out of a story that has some, let's face it, naff puppet dinosaurs in it. Pyramids of Mars, one of the most brutal, high-action, high-intensity Doctor Who stories there is, and that's before you get to Horror of Fang Rock. A director who knew how to manage Tom Baker, who knew how to get the performances she wanted, didn't take any grief from him, and I think the results are there on screen.
Very much so.
A director at number 3 that I think is maybe a little underrated, not always mentioned in the lists of the great classic directors, Rob, but I think he deserves to be number 3 when you look at his repertoire, and that is David Maloney. Now, I'm not going to list every story he did for Doctor Who, but just some of them: The Mind Robber, The War Games, Planet and Genesis of the Daleks, Deadly Assassin, and The Talons of Wen Chiang. They are a bunch of very well-respected, well-regarded classics, many of them pulled together with the fag end of budgets at the end of seasons, particularly in the Troughton era, just against all odds. I've said before that season 6 of Doctor Who is really Terrance Dicks just trying to get that season over the edge with a lot of help from David Maloney, and that's very much the case. He also did the Crotons in there. He's the guy that told them they couldn't make Prison in Space, and we all thank God he did that.
Yeah.
But, he's got stories that are regularly voted in the top 10. He went on to produce Blake Seven, of course, and directed a couple of their best episodes. Just a really strong director who also liked casting Bernard Horsfall a great deal.
Sure.
Number 2, a personal favourite of mine, again one who I think is underrated by a lot of fans, and that is Peter Grimwade. Whether it's Full Circle, Logopolis, Kinder or Earthshock, he does interesting and different things with the camera. He pushes the cast out of their comfort zones and gets really strong performances. He is high energy. He is multiple takes. He's multiple shots. He famously did not get on with the cast because he did see it as his job to push them, to get a really good cinematic sort of view of the stories. But I think just the results are there on screen. Number 1, it was always going to be, from the moment I'd put my first thoughts down on paper, it was always going to be Dougie Camfield at number 1.
Very fair, good call.
Whether you're talking about the Time Meddler, Dalek's Master Plan, Web of Fear, The Invasion, Inferno, Terror of the Zygons, The Seeds of Bloody Doom, this is a guy who gets classic after classic after classic on his list. And I can't just assume it's because he had some sort of amazing good fortune to always be handed ready to go classic director-proof script. Clearly, he was able to take a script and turn it into a classic. He does amazingly clever things with the camera work, particularly in the 1960s. He knows how to get the budget on screen while staying in budget. And sometimes that means sacrificing composed incidental music and just using a bit of shop music, but putting more energy out with more extras or more action or more camera work, whatever the case may be. His list of classics is just immense. That's not coincidence. We saw recently how good his work on Dalek's Master Plan was. With so little to work with, he is my number one.
All right, Dave. We have 3 snaps, one of them golden.
Okay, I wonder what the 2 that aren't are. Let's find out, Rob. Please, Mr. List Maker, make your list.
Thank you, Dave. In at number 5, I'm going with someone who only directed twice in the classic era, but they still make the list, and that is Graham Harper. And it's really on the strength of Caves of Androzani that he makes this list. I think anyone who's heard our Caves of Androzani episode, which I had Mark Cockram on as the co-host, will know what I think of Graham Harper's direction in that. I think it's just astounding. I think you look at it and you think there's nothing else in the Davison era like this, especially studio-bound stuff. He just does such new things with the camera and new things with angles, and he just produces something. I know Caves of Androzani has a good story. I know it's Davo's swan song. It's got a lot going for it already. But when he directs it in this certain way, it's just astounding. And so on the back of 2 stories, the other being Revelation of the Daleks, I think he's got to be in here at number 5. In at number 4, meanwhile, I've got David Maloney, and I think you were saying he's underrated, Dave, and I completely agree with that. He's got quite a body of work in Doctor Who. I mean, his work on the War Games alone is very impressive. But I think one of his real strengths is the way he takes characters and their personal interactions, and you think of things like Tom versus Davros, or Pat versus the War Chief, or even Tom versus the Master, and the way Maloney will build up an episode to these confrontations on these personal levels. I think that's very, very good. Again, a very underrated guy, and I'm very happy to have him here on the list at number 4. In at number 3, I've got Fiona Cumming, and I think she's had quite a renaissance over the last decade or 2. Not just people going back and saying, who are some women in Doctor Who we can pull out and make an example of to say, look, you know, women were doing great stuff in Doctor Who back in the day. When they actually get to her stuff, and she has 4 stories in the Davison era, which makes me very happy, being my era. They realise her stuff is very good. It works on a very emotional type level. I don't want to be cliche and say, oh, that's because she's a woman director, but it does have a different feel to a lot of Doctor Who of the era. So when you watch one of hers, like whether it's Planet of Fire or Snake Dance or Castrovalva or whatever, you go, okay, this is doing something different. Enlightenment, particularly. And I think that's just really bloody cool. So Fiona Cumming, man, has to make my list here.
Yeah.
In at number 2, Dave, I've got Patty Russell. And like you were saying about her, she is just a great director. Obviously a trailblazer for women in Doctor Who as well, being the first female director of Doctor Who back in the 60s with The Massacre, obviously one of my Grail stories that I'd love to see. But when you look at her 70s output with Tom Baker, whether it's like Pyramids of Mars or Horror of Fang Rock, it's just great stuff. Bangers, 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 you know. I think whereas Fiona Cumming does more emotional type stuff, the strength of Patty Russell, I think, is she makes things look expensive and serious, and even when the sets wobble, you're still meant to take this seriously because of the way she's presenting this material. I think she's just a fabulous director and deserves to be here at number 2. And in at number 1, snap, it's Dougie Camfield. Of course it's Dougie Camfield. I want to pull out Web of Fear and Inferno for very different reasons as great examples of his work. Web of Fear, you look at, it's all moody and black and white and just wonderfully directed. But then Inferno, that's the story where he had his heart attack halfway through, let's say. And it was because of the meticulous sort of notes he would make as a director that Barry Letts could step in and just direct the thing. And it looks like a Dougie Camfield story, even though Dougie Camfield wasn't there directing it for most of the shoot. That's just extraordinary. Also pull out things he directed like Dalek's Master Plan as well. And the guy is just a god of classic Doctor Who direction. It couldn't not be number 1 on both our lists.
Yeah, look, let's start there, Rob. Look, 2 very strong lists. We've got 3 snaps as we expected. I think that from the moment this topic came out of the hat of Rassilon, we both knew that we were heading towards Dougie Camfield at number 1 on both lists. Yep.
Yeah. Boring, but yeah.
Yeah, like that's inevitable. I think whenever any podcast does the classic directors talk, there is that sort of inevitable build towards Douglas Camfield. I think the more we see of his work, the better it is. And there's not a dud amongst his work. There's just no duds there at all.
No, and, a cynic might say, oh, but he also got given good stories. And yes, the stories he got given are good, but his direction plays a huge part.
Yeah, so look, a couple that just missed off being on my list. The one that I really, really struggled to leave off the list, and in the end I snuck in Tim Coombe, but I could have put her on, and that's Fiona Cumming, for all the reasons you said. I think that she's a very good director, and she's a rare example, I think, in Doctor Who where you can watch it, and as you say, from the tone and the atmosphere and the characterisation and the costumes and the style, you can kind of go, I think this is a Fiona Cumming story.
Yeah, very much so. And one area I think it really comes out, and tell me if I'm wrong, is in Janet Fielding's performance.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether it's just because they're both women or whether Janet just responds better to the way Fiona directs. But Janet Tegan comes across very well in her stories.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right as well. Michael E. Bryant was definitely on my shortlist. I give him a lot of credit, both in Doctor Who and Blake Seven, in fact, for being a young and up-and-thrusting director who is trying to do different things and experimenting. But I think particularly his early work in Doctor Who, you can see that happening, and when it works really, really well. But occasionally he tries something, you just go, nah, that did not work at all.
Yeah.
And that probably just dragged him off the top 5. The ones that I was really expecting to have on my list, but in the end couldn't, were a lot of the McCoy era ones. I'm thinking of people like Andrew Morgan, Alan Waring, Nicholas Mallet.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I've sat there and gone, oh, well, they directed an absolute belter, an absolute stunner. But before I put them on the list, what else did they do? They did that turkey? Okay, well, I can't knock off Paddy Russell for somebody who directed that. And
nope.
It's really interesting. I guess perhaps because a lot of them were quite young directors at that point in the McCoy era, that when they hit, they absolutely hit. But when they missed, my God, did they miss?
Yeah. You know what I find interesting about the McCoy era, though, Dave? I was coming into that at the time it was going out, so I was, 12 in 1987, 13 in 1988. I was still a young guy, and I wasn't that interested in direction. Like, I understood what direction was, and I'd grown up with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, so I understood directors on that sort of level. But when I'd be watching something on telly, I wouldn't be sort of obsessing over the directors. And particularly in Doctor Who, as I got older and I'd go back and think about directors, it was more the really classic directors that I'd gravitate more towards, rather than, say, someone who directed The Curse of Fenric. It's like a bit of a mental black hole for me, some of those directors.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely interesting. I think a lot of our listeners are going to be surprised by something in these lists, Rob, and that is that Graham Harper only came number 5 on yours and didn't make mine.
Yeah, and look, I don't think that's particularly unusual. He didn't do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Kees van Drezani is just extraordinary, and I couldn't not have him on my list. But at the same time, he did only do two things, so I understand why he didn't force his way onto your list, and at the same time, why he only made it into the 5th position on mine.
Yeah, I certainly am not putting him on my list because of any sense of malice or because I think he's crap. I agree with you. Kees van Drezani is a brilliantly directed piece of Doctor Who, but it is one story. He also did do Revelation of the Daleks. I don't think the direction is quite as good on that. In fact, I think there's a few quite bizarre directorial choices in Revelation of the Daleks. Is it well cast? For the most part. Is it high energy? Yeah, for the most part. But there are choices in that I go, why are you doing that in long shot? Why are you doing that in close up? Why didn't you get that performance done again? And it's not to say it's bad, but I couldn't give one classic and one, up over, a Tim Coombe who has 2 absolute belters, Paddy Russell who has 4 belters, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, and look, I think that's entirely fair. That's pretty much what I thought hearing your list.
And indeed, if we were to have top 5 directed stories, I think we'd both have Androzani in that.
Oh, without doubt. Without doubt, yeah. Dave. Yeah.
Yeah, so like if you're doing the top 5 best directed stories in Doctor Who, Kees van Drezani. If you're assessing Graham Harper's work holistically in the classic era, some people have him at number 1, and for very valid reasons. For me, it just the maths didn't quite get there.
Question without notice then, did you think I'd have David Maloney on my list? Because when you were presenting yours, it was almost like you were revealing Maloney, like, oh, look who I've got. But I had him on my list too, and I wondered what you thought of that.
I thought that he was an outside chance at being a snap, but I wasn't sure about it because I think that when you do listen to other podcasts and you do have people sort of talking off the top of their head about who are the best directors, and it's Harper and it's Camfield and it's Cumming, et cetera, et cetera. Maloney doesn't kind of make the list, and I think I don't know why it is. I think it's just because he does such a good job without being showy, or maybe it's because we don't have a lot of commentaries from him or directors or docos about him. Even Peter Grimwade, who did die tragically young, and the only interviews we have him are kind of from his angry me against the world. Well, all the actors hate me, but I don't care. I got the good shots and I got the things on screen, God damn it, and they can all go to hell. Like he's got that very angry energy, and I wonder if he'd lived another 20 or 30 years, we'd get a lot more reflective interviews from Peter Grimwade and maybe appreciate what he did a lot more.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's not helped by the fact that Davison and Waterhouse and Fielding and others very clearly didn't like him, didn't like his directorial style, and maybe would have preferred to be directed by Peter Moffat, who would say, "Oh, that was a lovely performance, darling. Let's knock off early and go to the pub."
Yeah.
But which of them gets the better performance on screen and has the legacy? I'll plump for Grimwade.
Yeah, look, I agree. And you never know, he could have even been interviewed later the same year or even a year later and just, been in a better mood or something, let alone, as you say, being interviewed a long time after the event, if that had ever been possible. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's right, and that's a shame, but I think very solid lists from us, Rob.
Yeah, happy with mine, happy with yours, Dave, and yeah, from the start it was going to be Dougie Camfield at number 1, no doubt about it.
It is not a bad thing to spend a bit of time waxing lyrical about Dougie Camfield.
Not at all.
Thank you, Frankie, for all your comments back to the Doctor Who show, but for your contributions to Turlo's Hat of Rassilon. It is time now to find out what we are going to be talking about next month.
Okay.
And that, Rob,
yes,
is from listener Brandon Moore.
Okay, Brandon.
Top 5 favourite individual episodes, brackets, from a multi-part story.
Oh, crikey, okay.
So he says we can have any episode from Classic Who apart from Mission to the Unknown, and any episode from a multi-part New Who.
Gosh.
We have hundreds of episodes to pick from, Rob. Can we still have snaps? Who knows?
We can do anything, Dave.
We absolutely can. That's a mystery which will be resolved next month. But until then, I've been Dave this time.
And I've been Rob this time.
Still?
Yep, still.
Oh, that's consistent.
I like to be consistent.
And we'll speak again soon.
We will. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.